It has truly been a while since the last theory. The reason is solely that I haven't had any ideas. The story just hasn't progressed enough yet, since the release of Antanomy and Hidden Star. We just have to wait and see what Zun is planning to do. But the subject we are about to talk today has nothing to do with those newer games. In this video we'll go all the way back to the embodiment of Scarlet Devil. The theory we have for today is pretty minuscule, but still interesting enough to get its own video. So today we'll talk about two characters and about their abilities. This video will also probably resemble a lot the 9th and 14th video, since I'll use a lot of science here. Something that you really shouldn't use when talking about Touhou, but since there's no one to stop me, I'll go for it. The first character we'll talk about is Rumia. We've talked about her once or twice already, but we've never talked about her ability in greater detail. So, the description about Rumia's ability in its simplicity is that she can manipulate darkness. We have actually seen this ability in action few times, and know that when Rumia is around, it gets darker. Zun has also made a comment that Rumia's ability sounds like that of a final boss, yet she is still a first stage boss. But none of this means really anything, because I'm proposing that Rumia's ability has been completely misunderstood. What I think is that instead of controlling darkness, Rumia is actually controlling light. There are two major reasons for why I think this is the case. The first one being that darkness and shadows are not the presence of any kind of substance or energy, and instead absence. Darkness is, in its simplicity, the absence of photons, and since darkness is basically just a lack of something, you really can't control it. You cannot control something that has nothing to control, so instead of manipulating darkness, Rumia is manipulating light to make area around herself darker. And this leads us to the other thing that led me to believe that Rumia is actually controlling light. Her name. Usually when it comes to Touhou characters, their names have some meaning when translated, but this is not the case with Rumia. In fact, her name doesn't mean anything in any language except in Finnish, where the word Rumia is plural for the word ugly, but that's not what I'm after. What I'm after is the linguistic differentiation between Japanese and English. You all probably know that Japanese language doesn't have the letter L. That's why when Japanese people speak English or any other Western language, any L in the language can very easily become R. And just a small side note, Rumia's purpose in EOSD was to be some sort of a punchline to introduce more Western style yokai into the franchise. So if we assume that Rumia's name is just mispronunciation and switch the R in her name to L, her name suddenly gets a meaning. Lumia. Lumia is a word that is most likely based from the Latin word lumen, meaning light, and the word lumia just happens to mean light, and a form of art where light patterns are used. That sounds like Danmaku to me. So if this doesn't convince you that Rumia is actually yokai of light instead of darkness, then I'm pretty sure that nothing will change your mind. But if Rumia were to be a yokai of light, she still uses that ability to make it dark all around her. The reason for this is unknown, but it may simply be the case of a yokai nature to like darker places more than lit places. One final thing that would suggest that Rumia can control light is that we have actually seen her do it already. In EOSD, one of Rumia's spells' name is Moonlight Ray. She is literally controlling moonlight to become her weapon in that spell. That's pretty strong giveaway of the true nature of her abilities, if you ask me. But now, when we have talked about our fair share about Rumia, let's turn our gazes to the other character we have on our to talk about list. Flandre. She once again gets a spot in our videos, probably because there isn't too much confirmed information about her, which leaves a lot of room for speculation. But her powers. In its simplicity, her power is to destroy anything and everything by crushing the eye of the thing she wants to destroy. So far, we haven't had anything that would be ruled out from Flandre's destruction ability. This ability is actually so overpowered, we have seen it only once in action. In Bohemia Archive in Japanese Red, we see Flandre blowing up a meteor that was heading towards the Scarlet Devil Mansion. Flandre destroys the meteor and a short conversation ensues between Flandre, Aya and Remilia. In this conversation, Remilia says that the meteor was being directed towards the Scarlet Devil Mansion and shows a piece of meteorite that has some writing on it as a proof. We don't know if it was true or not that the meteor was meant to hit the mansion, but the thing that is interesting is the piece of meteorite that Remilia showed. According to every last source of information I could find, that single piece is everything that was left from the meteor. If it wasn't, Gensokyo would be filled with fragments of that meteorite. This is actually supported by one of the statements from Perfect Memento in strict sense. The statement says that Flandre's ability not only destroys its target, but it also entirely erases the existence of that destroyed thing. Which leads me to believe that the fragment that Remilia showed wasn't an original part of the meteor and thus survived Flandre's attack. But what is the most interesting thing is the statement that Flandre's ability would erase the existence of anything and everything when used. If you know anything about basic physics, you'd know when to call bullshit, because according to the laws of physics, matter or energy cannot just stop existing. Something losing its existence is utterly impossible, at least according to physics. So what I did is that I started searching for a plausible explanation for Flandre's ability. So far there has been only one possible candidate: annihilation. And by that I mean annihilation in physics. You see, annihilation is a term used to describe the event where matter and antimatter come into contact with each other. When the two touch, they create a violent explosion and both antimatter and matter turn into pure energy, leaving no physical mass behind, as if both stopped existing. The only problem is that the annihilation process is unimaginably powerful. So to test if our hypothesis about the nature of Flandre's ability was correct, we have to determine how big of an explosion our one meteor would make if it were to be annihilated. To that we can use the Edward Muller's antimatter calculator. I'll try to remember to leave a link to it into the description. But now we have to type in the mass of the meteor. That in itself is a problem, since we have no idea how large the meteor that Flandre destroyed was. But if it survived all the way into the lower levels of the atmosphere, then it had to be quite large. So we'll use a rough estimate of 10,000 tons. Now, when we have the number written down, we can just press the compute button to see how powerful of an explosion 10,000 tons of antimatter would create. 10,000 tons of antimatter would create an explosion with a force of 390,400,000 megatons of TNT. That's over 4 times more energy than in the impact that killed the dinosaurs. In fact, the energy created by that explosion would be half of the amount required to knock the Earth out from the solar system. That explosion would wipe out all the life from the face of the Earth in just a couple of minutes. Instead of saving Gensokyo, Flandre would pretty much wipe it out in a couple of milliseconds. So, according to that calculation, we can pretty safely assume that Flandre's ability is not turning its target into antimatter. So, now I can pretty safely say that there is no scientific explanation for Flandre's ability. The best I can guess is that it is magic and Sun doesn't need to explain shit. But for now, we can just sigh for relief that the meteor was destroyed, Gensokyo saved, and that Flandre didn't wipe out the life on Earth. But was the meteor actually meant to hit the SDM intentionally? That'll probably be its own theory some other day, but that day is not today. But yeah, this has been a quick run through of my thoughts regarding the powers of Flandre. and Rumia. In Rumia's case, we can pretty safely say that we have found a pretty solid explanation for her ability, but in Flandre's case, we had to give up, since this is Touhou and common knowledge rarely works here. So I'll let it slide for now. But now, like always, it is time to remember that this has been just a theory and should not be taken as canon, although there are still chances for this turning out to be true. And like always, if you have any theory ideas yourself, please leave them in the comments below. I'd be interested in hearing about them. But for now, I have to bid you a farewell. My name is F.A.G.G.O.T, and we'll see in the next video. Or if you only watch my theories, then in the next theory video. Hopefully I can come up with something and it wouldn't be too long of a gap to the next theory.